welcome to the Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy, the free podcast for motivated teachers and school leaders who want to inspire their students and school community in literacy learning. Make sure you subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast player, and for more amazing literacy resources, check out the show notes provided with every episode.
Hi, I'm Sharon and I'm the host of A Teacher's Toolkit for Literacy. In every Toolkit episode, we bring you specific resources, tools, strategies, tips, techniques to help you in your job as a teacher of literacy. Firstly, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we gather on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present and ongoing connection to the land and cultural beliefs. And welcome, Phil.
Thanks, Sharon. Welcome to our podcast, everyone. And we welcome Genevieve Kruyssen, all the way from Brisbane, in the bookshop called
Where the Wild Things Are.
Where the Wild Things
and
Are.
I'm not Genevieve, sorry. It's all mixed up, isn't it?
And I'm going to probably butt out a bit because I know Sharon and Genevieve are going to take the show over. So here we go.
Wonderful. Thanks, Phil.
Yes, welcome, Genevieve. You've had me reading like a mad woman over the last few days, so I'm so excited about this collection of books that you're bringing to us today. And maybe you want to just tell us a little bit, well, I don't know. You don't have to tell us too much about how you selected them, but just maybe a quick little, what kinds of things were in your mind as you were pulling together this collection of books?
Yeah, definitely. So I've pulled a few books that for different ages that I have grabbed my attention in different ways. I guess my favorite new picture books that I think fill nice holes or are just presenting really strongly as picture books. And then across that, just a couple of my favorite read aloud novels for younger readers, as well as just a couple of middle grade fantasies or historical novels that I just think kids definitely will want to read.
Yeah, fabulous. And there can't be any better selection criteria than that, because at the heart of it all, of course, is, what is it that we can bring to children that is absolutely worth not just reading, but, talking about with somebody as well, because it's just bringing such wonderful richness to them, whether it is as a read aloud or whether it's, the very book that a teacher or a parent will say, oh, like that you said, that fills a hole for us, as a reader.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe that what you've got here does that, because every book I picked up, I thought, okay, there's something new. There is something that we don't have. So where do you want to start?
Well, should we go with the picture books?
Let's, yes.
Start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I feel like a lovely one to start with is Good Night, Good Beach by Joy Cowley and Hilary Jean Tapper. I think they're a New Zealand pair.
They are. And are well known. Well, certainly Joy Cowley will be well known to many teachers, but
it's got that really, so the illustration style in this is very kind of quaint, old-fashioned, I think appeals well to grandparents. That's always something that we look at as a bookstore.
Yes.
But the reason I just love it, I personally feel like at the moment in publishing, and I think all my picture books have done that, there's like too much of a focus on like teaching and not enough just good rhythm and fun stories.
Yes.
And I think Good Night, Good Beach just has a lovely rhythm to it that invites you to want to read it.
Yes. Oh, I love that you've used the word rhythm to it. It has such a rhythm. It is in essence, I think, kind of like a list poem. It's a list of really the beautiful observations and experiences from dawn till dusk at the beach.
Yeah. And I just think so many families will enjoy that time together. And so those little moments being listed is really precious. And there's lots to spot out on the pages as well. It begins, creaky old bed with rumpled sheet. The next page is sunburned skin and sandy feet. It just is, such an invitation.
Isn't it? Yes, yeah. As I was thinking about, and it's interesting that you say, that grandparents, it'd be a book that grandparents would absolutely love, to bring to their grandchildren. And I suppose because, one, the beach is such an Australian shared experience, spending a day at the beach or staying over at the beach. But when I was thinking about, who is the book really for, I thought, it's, for the little ones, but it's for everyone who ever had a beach holiday, with family or with friends, and for everybody who has just been to the beach and just loved the whole wonder. It's just beautiful, simple, rhythmical capturing of
and a great
the day.
Good night book.
Oh,
Like just that simple rhythm to, as you're in bed, to put you off to sleep, I think.
yeah. Do you know, I hadn't even got to that point, and that's in fact where it starts. It starts.
That is where
Good
it
night,
starts.
good beach. Yeah. Oh, do you know what? Maybe I'm going too much into that teaching mode, Genevieve. And I think that's why it's really important for us to have you talking about books too, is that like just straight out, as if you're really representing the author.
I think my perspective as well is that funny thing of, oh, who can I sell this book to? Which gives you a different angle as well. We'll talk about it later on, but
Yeah.
I have a graphic novel, Ember, and the Island of Lost Creatures, and that is basically on my list because as soon as I read the first few pages of it, I was like, I can give this to kids that love Lightfall, which would definitely be a way that educators are obviously looking at books for those connections across it. So I think that's
Yes.
where we have a bit more crossover too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Anything else you wanted to share with us about Good Night, Good Beach?
No, just
What
that
else?
it's a lovely moment.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's it. It is a lovely moment. It's actually kind of all these lovely small moments across a day, from that morning to night, and all the sensory pieces that come into it. Just
It's very sensory oriented.
yes, yeah. So it is a beautiful reflection of a wonderful day. Well, anytime at the beach.
Day and night.
Day and night, yes, exactly.
The next book I have is Two Turtles by Keir Thomas and illustrated by Jake A. Minton. And I love this book.
Me too.
I think the best way to introduce it to you is through the text. It goes, Terence is falling off a cliff. That's the next page. You're probably wondering if he's going to be okay. That depends on a few things. And I love books that automatically, how to read them.
Yes.
I love that it invites such tonal change and play in your voice. And I think it's just makes it such a joy to read.
Yes. But I love what you say. It's an invitation into, how do we read this?
It tastes
for
good.
the effect. Oh, it does taste good. That's such a great term. Such a great
It's got
term.
those strong sentences, how hard his shell is, the height of the cliff. And so this story tells you about a turtle that is falling off a cliff, and then it retracts and it says, you're probably, wondering how he got here. And you get introduced to another turtle. And it turns out they always fight over everything. And one of the turtles, when they were fighting, started falling off the cliff and calls out, I'll get to the ground quicker than you. And the other turtle jumps off to be part of the race.
Yeah.
And so it's really playful. I feel like John Klassen fans would appreciate the illustration style, although it's much more action-based. It's not using the same stillness as John Klassen. And I think it's probably a little bit more, I feel like John Klassen's a little niche, whereas I think this has a broader audience.
Yes.
But I can imagine early childhood and early primary kids just loving this. Well, also senior kids, because it's just such a fun little book.
Yes, and the information in the illustrations really deserves a long, slow look, doesn't it? About what
they're
is
dynamic.
really going on here. Because there's not much text per page, but there is.
It has a bit of a range. There's one, I think, page that has a bit more, and then a lot of them are quite shorter. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, there's that wonderful page. The whole competition thing has set in, about what they've each got in their shells. So the whole comparative thing's happening, and then it was neck and neck. And then we've got this, one page, just 3 words, 3 big illustrations, until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And
then we have only one turtle on the next page, right? Like the other turtle has disappeared.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yet there's clues, and that's the fun of it is, right, as you look, where is the other turtle? And then we just see, this tiny little chink on the edge of the cliff. What's
a rock
going
falling.
on? Yes.
Yeah.
And the tiny, tiny illustration of, the next page, these little bits of rock still falling.
Yeah.
And this whole speech bubble coming from the depths of nowhere. So wonderful, as you always say, like invitation to the reader of, oh my goodness, yes, who is saying this? Like this is a speech bubble coming from nowhere.
That beautiful working with, like that's, I think the best picture books have the story being told between the text and the illustration.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a partnership. The Klassen books are more...
Well, what I was thinking...
He's author-illustrator, isn't he?
Yeah, he's author-illustrator, but I was thinking the reason I drew the comparison whilst looking at it again is it's the eyes, like, because his books, because there's so much stillness on the page.
Oh, yes.
The stories are told through the eyes of the characters, and this has a lot of movement on the page, but it's still the eyes that are telling us everything about our characters.
Do you know, there's a whole new thought for me. That is so true. That is... Oh my goodness, you're right. It's everything about the eyes. See, I haven't read that book that way. Wow, such a good thing to be noticing.
Yeah, and it's definitely worth relooking at John Klassen's books with that in mind, because it's really interesting the way he uses that.
Wow. I'm sorry, but now I just can't take my eyes off every page of this book. You're right. It is. I wasn't looking at that as I was reading it. I'm looking I'm looking elsewhere, except that I also know, when we're really trying to work out what is going on, there's a lot of like, how's a character feeling? What are their motivations? Of course, we want to be looking at facial expressions right down to the eyes, let alone the rest of the face. You're right. It is all about the eyes.
And even the cover just shows you that. Like, so the cover is this turtle staring out at you. It's a very cute turtle.
Yes.
And it's got giant, wide open eyes with eyebrows exploding off the top of its head.
Yeah.
And it's just got that, oh dear, what has happened happening.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, have you read Neil, the boring, amazing, but like boring is crossed out, so it says amazing, Sea Cucumber?
Yes.
I think this is like that book's companion. That's completely different, but that one also, like the tone of the storytelling is so funny.
Yeah.
And its humour is obtuse.
Yes.
But it's such a unique book.
I love all this language that you're using, to bring to your description of text, actually, because it's all those things that, as teachers, we're thinking about, do we use that word? Do we go, what's the tone of this? What is that? And what is tone? What are we getting at? Often teachers will say, how do we describe what it is that, is coming through this book? How do we get children thinking more deeply or more insightfully into a book? And I think they are key words that get us there, about what's the tone, what is the tone here, and therefore how do we read it?
And I imagine like books like that have playful tones would be, I envision, fun for kids learning to read, because those words flow out of your mouth more, like in a more entertaining way.
Yes.
So it would help with the comprehension.
Absolutely. And I think that's, a real driver for getting to much deeper understanding by having some of these things that we can be intentional about when we talk about, what is the tone of something? And so therefore, how do we reflect that in our voice? I'm being very teachery here, but, thinking about this, and I suppose wanting to reclaim some of these things for children and their reading, because there can be times where reading becomes, okay, this is a big word to use, but some children seem to find reading a bit of a joyless process, because it's about getting what's on the page right, and I've got to be doing this. And yet if we shift it from, when teachers talk about, children reading fluently, and that will be with, it's how fast they're reading it, but it isn't. It's about what's the tone of it, what are we trying to, give over here? What are we understanding? Like, how would the character say that? Yeah. Anyway, that was a big side thing. Let's go back to.
Well, I think that kind of, in a way, leads kind of into the big book of Australian nursery rhymes.
Yes.
Just as a book, it's by Franny Lesacq. She's written it and illustrated it. And it's just full of nursery rhymes. And I know that, I've heard teachers saying that, kids know nursery rhymes a lot less now, and that, when they do know nursery rhymes, it's a lot more of a useful, you can teach against them.
Yes.
That kind of thing. And I love this because I'm very much on the case of, I love fairy tales as they are. I love nursery rhymes as they are. But, I'm not really saying that I think they need changing. But I love that this makes nursery rhymes relevant to an Australian audience.
Yes, and playful.
Really playful. So it's just the illustrations are bold, simple, full of beautiful colours. The nursery rhymes goes from twinkle, twinkle, southern stars. It's raining, it's pouring. Just so many, row, row, row your boat. And the changes in them are really minimal. But so I think I've got here, Jack be nimble. Jack be nimble, Jack be strong, Jack jumped over the billabong. So, and we've got a lovely picture of a big kangaroo going boing. And I just think they're great and fun and would actually be really useful and really fun sing-alongs and read-alouds.
Yes, I absolutely agree. The energy in what I'd call the innovations, that from the original rhyme through to the Australianised version of it.
Yeah.
And bringing in just...
I think it's just lovely things that romanticise our country for kids too.
Yes. And you're right, they are quite minimal changes. And
you could still know the original and you could know this and it wouldn't hurt your brain, you wouldn't be confused.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also a nice way, through these to actually revisit some of the traditional ones as well, to say, this is what we...
Well, as a teaching tool, I think playing with writing poems and rhymes, it would be so easy to use because you'd be so easily be able to look at the original ones and then look at these, and then kids could write their own.
Exactly. And that's where I think there is just so much scope with this book to not only sing and, enjoy this whole book, all of these rhymes, but the opportunity for children to have already seen, this is how somebody changed it. I could create my own.
Definitely.
So, yes, time and time again. It's a beautiful book.
I've just opened to here we go round the Banksia bush, and it's just, here we go round the Banksia bush, the Banksia bush, the Banksia bush. Here we go round the Banksia bush on a dry and dusty morning. And it's just got this gorgeous red and yellow page with crows flying around a Banksia bush.
Yes. Yeah, they're the ones going around. It's stunning. And so immediately we can see what is it that we can change. So here we go round what's it going to be this time? The protea bush, the grevillea bush, I don't know, whatever. And then there's a context to all of these things, what's local to us? What's in our space? What is the name of this bush that, was in our front yard of the school or, around the oval or in our space? And, is it an Australian native plant? Is it, I think it just brings such, thinking about nursery rhymes came out of certain historical contexts. And I just love that this all brings it into the Australian context. And we make it something that connects right to our environment.
Certainly.
Yeah. No, it's an absolute, absolutely loved that. There were only a couple where I thought, oh my gosh, what has that come from? Oh, I really loved Pygmy Possum.
Oh yeah, that one's cute.
Yes. the innovation on Peter Piper picked his peck of pickled peppers. This one, Pygmy Possum picked a peck of pickled pollen. Peck of pickled pollen, Pygmy Possum picked. If Pygmy Possum picked a peck of pickled pollen, where's the peck of pickled pollen that Pygmy Possum picked? Just beautiful.
Yeah,
So
I remember
much fun.
actually memorizing Peter Piper when I was like 7. My grandma gave me a book of nursery rhymes. I remember memorizing it like when I was meant to be in bed and then coming back out to the lounge room, so proud that I'd memorized it.
Yeah. So innovations on, and that's the thing, isn't it? Once those rhythms and rhymes are in our head, then we can do something with them. Yeah. And I have to say, Dingo, what a very clever innovation on bingo.
Oh, yeah. Dingo, what's his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, that was a totally delicious book, that one, and I think that's got a lot of scope.
I kind of think it's a book for everyone.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so useful in a lot of scenarios and just so fun.
Yes, I agree. And just a really brilliant way to, if we haven't got children, with that bit of a bank of, just some of those rhymes that roll off the tongue, that this is just a great way to introduce them through another avenue, and as those Australian innovations. Excellent. All right. Or have you got any other picture books tucked away there?
The last is Wanda Gibson's 3 Dresses. So this one's newly out from University of Queensland Press.
Oh, nice.
And I really like it. So it tells the story of Wanda as a little girl. And she was living and working on the Hopevale mission. And for 2 weeks a year, they would walk to the beach. But so what this book does is they were given once a year 3 dresses, and then it talks about, there's this great phrase, take 3 dresses, 1 to wash, 1 to wear, and 1 spare. It's just telling a bit about her life. So they're going to the beach, what they take, when they get tired, and it's all her own paintings. There's this great little bit about when they're fishing. It goes, it's really simple, frank text. My favorite thing to do was fishing. We'd swim next to Mum and keep the live bait in our mouths for her. When she needed it, we'd just open our mouths and give it to her, which is just such what a moment.
Yeah.
But what it does, the whole story is like linked through the dresses. Like they talk about how it's bookended with them being given the dresses, taking them with them. When they get back from their only 2-week holiday, they have like them washing the dresses the last day before they went back to work on the mission and work and learning on the mission. And just that is, I think the storytelling of it's really clever, but it's also telling, you're also learning a lot about the intensity of these kids and these families' lives.
Yes.
But through the dresses and what they meant to them.
Wow. That just brings us round to that, the power always of story being how any story helps us to learn more about our world, ourselves, and others. And when people bring their stories to us through the written text, that's such a privilege, isn't it? For us to experience, their story in life, that we can really get to understand so many things about other people's experiences. And I think that's such a critical piece for us all, to just really understand not just our own story, but lots of people's stories.
And I definitely feel like this is just a good book to just read and share. And it is just there as a story to that teaches you, but it's primarily a story.
Yes, yeah. So it's called 3 Dresses
by Wanda Gibson.
And age range that you would put on
It's probably more of an early primary book.
Right, okay.
It's got a bit of text on all the pages.
Yeah. And she illustrated, illustrated
she's painted
her paintings.
Images as well,
right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're moving into some of the chapter books now.
Yeah, some of those smaller chapter books. Both I think that operate as fun read alouds or good for kids that are competent readers, but not wanting anything too big. So the first I wanted to touch base on is Losing the Plot by Annalise Bird. She's a Brisbane writer, and this is her debut book. And
Writers' Week this week?
I'm not sure, actually. Yeah.
Right.
It's a Hansel and Gretel play adaptation or play. The little tagline on the front is, "When did things get so grim?"
Yeah.
But the thing that for me I really enjoyed was the humor. It has sprightly dialogue, and it's pretty pacey. You're running through the plot, but it also has really playful little bits of writing. I love the acronyms in it.
Oh, that is the fun of it, isn't it? It's just loaded with acronyms.
Yeah,
and
Annalise clearly really likes acronyms.
Yes, yeah. And so much, the license, I suppose, like they have, FANCY standing for the Fairy Tale Alliance Network of Character Unions. And then it's referenced
Spelt with
there.
a Y.
Spelt with a Y.
Yeah.
Yes, and when someone questions...
Wait, I protested. Union doesn't start with a Y?
Yeah.
No, Gretel agreed, but union does.
Yeah.
And then the great line after that, "I couldn't argue with such unarguable logic."
Yeah, yes, yeah. Yes, it is sprightly text, and it's very bantery, isn't it? Backwards and forwards between characters, especially when our two, Basil and Terry, end up in fairy tale world. They're with Hansel and Gretel and the
trying
others
to make sure that Hansel and Gretel don't get sent to deep trouble, capitalized, of course, because their fairy tale potentially has some plot holes in it.
Yeah. This is one of those lovely books that, like the Australian Nursery Rhymes one, that because it's fairy tale based, if we know a lot about fairy tales, we get a lot of it. If we don't, it's a nice one to actually give reason for bringing an original fairy tale or two back into our children's
rotation.
Yes, yeah. Because like with the true story of the Three Little Pigs, from the wolf's perspective.
Yeah, that was such a good one.
And
of the big bad wolf.
Yes, yeah. And so they do refer to this as a fractured fairy tale. And I do know, quite a lot of teachers say, oh, we really want to, get our children writing a fractured fairy tale. And yet, without, knowledge of fairy tales, you can't go playing around with it just yet. So I think, I'd have this on my list. If I've got anything around fairy tales happening at my year level, I would definitely be bringing back some examples of the fairy tales and having something like this to have that other layer of all that fun around. Okay, we get all the humour here. We get the inside, such clever, quirky things that Annalise includes in here. I enjoyed this one a lot.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
And good short chapters. And
features a character that's a reluctant reader. So we're getting a little bit of reluctant reader rep.
Yes. We did forget to mention that. I was thinking that very same thing about, one friend who's having to help the other get over their, reluctance in reading and having to do the, which way around.
Terry's the reluctant reader, Basil's the nerd.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Basil Beeden and Terry Clegg. Great names, yeah.
And also I think something that I think could be nice is that comprehension-wise you'd need to be doing reasonably well to read this, but it does have those short chapters and it does have a lot of climaxes. So you could be reading through this at a slower pace and discussing it a fair bit. Yeah. But you'd still be progressing through the plot and having some more interesting vocab.
Yes, yeah, I agree. For many children, this would make a great read aloud because I think there is a lot to discuss unless I knew a lot about fairy tales. And the language is deliciously rich. There is a lot of...
It definitely suits a read aloud.
Yes, yeah. And certainly doesn't mean that a reader couldn't pick it up, but there is so much to talk about in here and so much play with words, just the acronyms alone, just unpacking, what's in all of those acronyms. And there's so many of them.
And a fun reason to write your own acronyms.
Yes. Yes, and actually such a fun
Or
feature
acronym
for
poems.
children to put acronym poems or, to put into your own writing, what's the acronym that I could have in my story about whatever it is, just as almost a literary technique or a literary device that I can use, to add to it. But yes, I think it's a rollicking read aloud that's just ripe for lots of noticings and making connections and, looking back, oh yes, what does that acronym mean again? I think the short chapters are a good call on it because it means you can do, in a read aloud session, you can really do a chapter and lots of chatting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And we'll take a break there from part 1 of our podcast. We look forward to you joining us for part 2. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. To make sure you don't miss any literacy learning tips and insights, please subscribe to our show on your favourite podcast player. At Q Learning, our literacy specialists draw on over 30 years of teaching and international consulting experience to deliver world-class learning solutions. We equip, empower and support teachers to become their authentic selves. To find out about upcoming webinars and about how Q can help you and your school, visit qlearning.com.au. And you can get even more amazing teaching resources right now at teachific.com.au. Stay tuned.